there, I'm Beverly Sartain, and this is the Holistic Coach Legacy Podcast, where you get support in being an impactful and confident coach. In today's episode, we will be chatting with Tiffany Niemann about hiring a virtual assistant. So this is a question that always comes forward in an entrepreneur's journey. These questions of when should I hire a virtual assistant? What will this person do for me? How much do I pay this person? You know, these burning questions around virtual assistant is exactly why I wanted to have Tiffany on with us, because I wanted to personally ask her some of these questions so that you have more information in order to better move forward in your own business. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Tiffany. It's so great to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm excited to be here and talking with you guys today.
Yeah, me too, because I was just sharing with you that I oftentimes feel like people have a lot of questions around hiring a virtual assistant. I know for me personally that I actually have never hired a virtual assistant. And I say that I've got a couple of people that work with me right now. They work with me around very specific things. So maybe someone would say that it is like a virtual assistant. But it was always something I was curious about in my business, but I didn't have a lot of information about it. And I didn't really know where to get that information. So when you and I connected, I was like, oh, please come on the podcast, because I really think like this is such valuable information for people. And so I'm super glad we get to have this discussion today. So
yeah, me too.
So why don't we kick it off with just a little bit about yourself and how you became a virtual assistant.
Sure. So I am, obviously Tiffany Niemann, and a little bit about me. I actually have a very diverse background. And that's something that I think you'll commonly see with virtual assistants is some very diverse backgrounds. For myself, I actually have a degree in medical laboratory science, so something completely unrelated to virtual assistants. And I actually am a full-time instructor as well at a university where I live, teaching for an MLS program. So, like I said, I've got a very diverse background, but in regards to how I became a virtual assistant, it really honestly probably sparked right after the COVID pandemic. Everybody went online for everything, including, myself for being an instructor. I had to completely become online and completely teach myself how to use all of these types of tools in order to function in the online world. And it wasn't until I was starting to transition back into my work life back on campus rather than being online that I really felt a pull that, hey, I actually am really enjoying this time to myself, the ability to dictate my own schedule a little bit. Right now, both my husband and I, we live on a very, very large ranch in rural South Dakota. And for myself to be able to get to my work on a daily basis, I commute almost 45 minutes one way. And we also have my 2-year-old daughter. And so when I was able to work at home, I had the luxury of being able to say, hey, I'm going to carve out this 1 hour, 2 hour block to just spend with my daughter during the day rather than having to always be in this chaos of trying to get supper on the table and trying to get kids down for bed and not actually getting to spend quality time with my daughter, quality time with my husband, and even quality time for myself. So I really started looking into this virtual world of being able to run my own business from home. So that was a huge draw for me for looking into becoming a virtual assistant.
It's beautiful. That's such a great story. I've been doing my business for almost 7 years, and so I do everything online. So when COVID happened, it wasn't as big of a shift for me, and so I really appreciate hearing your story and really, the things you're sharing. I've been experiencing for the last 7 years, and it's hard to put it into words for people, like what that freedom really means and feels like. And I feel like you just did such a great job of describing how empowering and how good it can feel when you are creating this spaciousness in your life, and you get to enjoy the people in your life so much more with that spaciousness. So that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you this, because I find that people don't always know when it's the right time to get a virtual assistant, right? Like, we're at the beginning of our businesses maybe, and there's limited resources. And so I find people maybe have a challenge of wanting to get a virtual assistant at that point. But I would love to hear from you, like, what are 2 or 3 things that someone might be experiencing in their business to know that they actually do need a virtual assistant?
Sure. The first big one that always stands out to me with anybody running their business, whether it's online or sometimes, there are virtual assistants for those that work with corporate jobs or brick and mortar type stores. But um, a big one that I typically see is when individuals are starting to feel a sense of overwhelm, an entire sense of I have to do everything. I'm getting so run down with having to try to balance it all, and I'm wanting to scale, but I can't because I'm so drowned in all of the tasks, the mundane tasks that need to be taken care of, whether that's, just managing my calendar or managing all of the emails that are coming in, or just simply replying to some of those basic questions. I mean, those are all things that suck up time throughout your day that you could be spending to grow your business. So that's a big one that I
Mm-hmm.
typically see with clients is that they're feeling this sense of overwhelm and they want to spend more time doing the thing that they love, which is running their business or scaling their business. Or if it's in a business like coaching or anything like that, they want to spend more time with their clients to be able to give that more one on one time rather than having to do all of the back end stuff and not giving the clients the quality time that they need. So that's a big one that I see. Another one is for those that don't really feel that tech savvy.
Yes.
Um, that's a huge one. I mean, there's some individuals that say, you know, I need to manage this calendar, this calendar, this calendar, but I have no idea how to do that in one platform or in one space. And I've just been, driving myself crazy having to bounce back and forth between these 3 different programs. And so for individuals that don't feel maybe that tech savvy, sometimes it's nice to be able to bring in a virtual assistant who does have experience with those roles and being able to help condense that overwhelm of the technology that's coming out, whether it's new programs, whether it's just simple tasks. Like I said, like with email management, a lot of the times it's just easier to have that delegated out to a
Mm-hmm.
virtual assistant rather than not.
Yes, beautiful. The overwhelm and the tech. It's so funny, Tiffany, that you mentioned the overwhelm, because I literally got a message from somebody just this past week. Somebody that's in my circle, and she has her own coaching business, and that's exactly what she was describing to me. That she was overwhelmed with all of the tasks that she had to do, and she wasn't able to really do the things that she loves to do because she felt like all of these other tasks were pulling at her, right? And so I really resonate with that one so much. So, what would you say to someone who is super self reliant in their business and wants to do everything themselves?
That's a very tricky one. Just because, It depends on the type of virtual assistant that you bring on. I'll just say that much because there are virtual assistants that rely heavily on their clients to really guide them in what they want and how they want it done. But there's also virtual assistants, that a person just has to allow that trust and allow that delegation to happen
Hmm.
for them to successfully run their business. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that letting go of some of that self reliance can actually help reduce some of that stress that they're feeling.
Yes.
And it's very challenging to do because I am definitely one of those types of
Me
individuals
too.
that
Me
likes, I like to have my hands in everything and know what's going on. But to be truthful with you, there's times that I'll have to, chat with my clients and say, it's okay. I've got this. And so letting go of some of that can actually help reduce that stress so much. So that would be one of the big things that I would just tell any of my clients is that just take a second to understand this is for a greater purpose,
hmm
and that in the long run, this is going to be helping you and helping your business.
Yeah. I brought this question forward because honestly, I'm one of these people too. It's an old story for me and I've done lots of work around it, but I noticed that self-reliance came back up for me when I started my coaching business. And so I've had to work through it again. And I oftentimes feel like maybe this is why I didn't hire a virtual assistant sooner, because of that self reliance. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about it because it
Definitely.
was definitely something that I've had to work through. And so how would you say then is a good way to develop a relationship between business owner and virtual assistant so that trust is there and that somebody might be able to delegate more and let go of tasks more and allow themselves to be more supported?
I think one of the big things, and this is super helpful for myself as a virtual assistant, bringing on any client. I think if you're posting that job or if you're looking for that individual, usually a lot of times you have some form of an interview or some form of a discovery call prior to bringing this virtual assistant on. But one of the big things is anytime you're posting those job descriptions, it's so helpful for an individual to have very specific details. So I say that because there's often times where, I'll see job postings and they'll mention on there, hey, we're a Christian run business. These are kind of what we're looking for. We want somebody who's a self starter, or we want somebody who works very closely with the CEO or something like that. And they will be very specific in what their business is about and how they typically run things. Because for those businesses that post job openings or job descriptions that are very vague, and you've got a virtual assistant that's coming in there, they might not mesh as well with the business owner or with the team because there wasn't that job description or that immense detail. So
Mhm.
that's a huge thing. But then also, I had kind of mentioned about discovery calls or those interviews. I'm a very firm believer of if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right.
Yeah.
So anytime I'm hosting these discovery calls or interviews with my clients, I have to have that feeling of comfortability with them in order for me to move forward. And it's okay to say, hey, maybe I don't jive with this client very well, or maybe I don't jive with this virtual assistant very well. And be specific in what you're looking for because essentially this is somebody that you are bringing on to help run your business and to work very closely with you. So that would be probably my two biggest tips as far as bringing somebody on and really just being specific in what you're looking for and what you're wanting out of your business.
What would you say to somebody who's maybe not sure about what they're looking for? Because I think that's like some people can relate to that too. I appreciate like what you're saying. Like if you are clear to be very specific about that, because it's really going to help find the right match. What do you say if someone's not really clear?
I think, in all honesty, being honest about that
Yeah.
is helpful as well. Because when we, and I say this as we as virtual assistants, when we find somebody who we jump on a discovery call or jump on an interview, and they don't say that, hey, I'm not really sure what I want. When we jump on those and this person is all over the place, it's honestly more of a turnoff than it is anything for a virtual assistant. But if a person's going in there and saying, I'm not really sure what it is I'm looking for, but I'd like to sit down and talk to somebody to help navigate that with me, then a person can go into that discovery call or that interview and say, okay, I'm sitting down with this business owner and we are helping her find her direction. And so that is very helpful, is just being honest about that, rather than just going in there and pretending like you know what you want and you really don't.
Yes. That sounds wonderful, to just be authentic and truthful and real about where you're at and what you're looking for, what your needs are. And then it's then finding some common ground there. So what are your favorite services to provide, Tiffany?
If anybody were to actually like meet me on a regular basis, I get kind of teased about this, but a lot of people would say that I'm probably hyper organized.
Mhm.
And it's something that comes so naturally for me, but for some other individuals, it might not. But for myself, some of the services I love to provide, I love being able to do calendar and schedule management. I think from what I have seen so far, that is where a lot of people feel their first sense of overwhelm is, I don't have time. I don't know when I'm going to do this. And I love being able to sit down with a client and say, okay, for today, you are going to work on client emails from 12 to 1. You're going to take a 15-20 minute break, and it allows more productivity for business owners. And rather than overbooking themselves, overwhelming themselves, and really taking and looking and analyzing their time and their schedule, to be able to say, you can get all of this done and you can have a life and be able to enjoy it as well. So that's one of my biggest ones that I love doing personally. I really like email management and inbox management. I think that's also a very foundational thing for businesses as well. Being able to have somebody to sort off those junk emails, or being able to just simply reply to basic questions. Like I said, that frees up so much time for the business owner themselves. And being able to have that person to rely on to be efficient with those emails and be timely with those emails as well. So some of the other services that me personally that I provide, since I do have a healthcare background and I've got my master's degree, one of the things that I like providing as well is just basic research, especially for healthcare fields. That's really where my niche is for my virtual assistance business.
Mhm.
Providing that research or even proofreading and editing. Having somebody to be able to go through and double check some of this stuff and make sure that, in my case, that number one, it's scientifically correct, or that it's proven, or that it's backed by research. Those are things that I like to provide. So those would probably be my top three things that I like to provide. It's not definitely everything that I provide, but for sure some of my favorite areas.
That's great. That's great that you know yourself so well, and that you can just so beautifully articulate, just your areas of expertise and also the things you enjoy. Because I think enjoying how we're serving people makes that service just such a higher quality, I
For
think.
sure.
So I love that you're pulling from that research background and offering that to people. That's wonderful. So what could someone expect when bringing on you specifically as a virtual assistant?
Sure. For myself, and I think I also speak to other virtual
Mhm.
assistants as well. For myself, currently my virtual assistant business is part time. And there's a lot of individuals who have their business as a part-time business, either due to the fact that they're still working a full-time job or they're just simply wanting to bring in extra income. So one of the things that I always want to make sure my clients know, and that other individuals who are bringing on a virtual assistant know, is that a lot of these individuals might be working evening hours or might be working on the weekends, and being able to be flexible about that. Now, if it's somebody that you are needing during daytime hours, like I said, that transparency and putting that in the job description is so helpful.
Mhm.
So that's one of the big things. But another thing is, when you're bringing on a virtual assistant, I think some some people don't understand also the cost that's involved as well. Now, I bring that up and I bring that forward just because a lot of times I feel like people undershoot the cost for what it takes to bring on a virtual assistant. And usually, when you're bringing a beginner virtual assistant, they'll be charging anywhere between $20 and $25 an hour.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of the times, sometimes that's a scary number for businesses or for individuals who are just starting their businesses. But a person has to be able to look at the time that they are saving by bringing this individual on, or looking at the quality that this person is bringing to your business that you couldn't provide yourself. So I think those are the two big things that I always like to be upfront and honest with my clients about, and anybody looking for that VA.
You're doing such a great job of giving us really great tips. I appreciate it so much. Like, this is such valuable information that you're giving us. And so I just want to thank you for that so much. So what would you say, like, I heard you say $20 to $25 for a virtual assistant. What would you recommend? Like, what, because I'm always like, I'm somebody who wants everything to be a win-win for people. Like, I personally want to pay people what they feel good about so that I get the best quality service and they feel like they're getting what they deserve and more. That's just that's how I like to do business. So I wanted to just ask you, what would you recommend is actually a really good rate to pay a virtual assistant?
I think I think it depends on how many hours you're expecting out of your virtual assistant.
Okay.
So for a virtual assistant that, might be looking for those lower hours a week, maybe between 5 to 7 hours a week, that 20 to 25 is definitely a great rate. But a lot of the times there's also virtual assistants that will have packages as well. And with those packages, there can either be 10 hours a month, 20 hours a month, so on and so forth. And a lot of the times with virtual assistants with those higher hour packages, they usually give you some form of a discount or some form of a lowered rate by having those larger hours. But I definitely would say looking between that 20 to 25 for somebody that, might be putting in those lower hours a week would definitely be appropriate.
Awesome. That's really, really good to know. Just so people know what to expect. And again, I think sometimes there's just misunderstandings. And when we don't know, maybe if we don't know what we're supposed to be paying people, maybe we don't reach out then to get the support we need. So I
Definitely.
find that the more information we have and the better understanding we have about these things, it just makes us feel more confident that we are doing good business with people.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's important for sure. So, we talked a little bit about questions that someone would ask to make sure they're a good fit as a virtual assistant, but I wanted to see if there was anything else there that you feel is significant. I know you talked about being clear and specific and sharing more details, but are there any other questions that you think would be significant for somebody to ask?
Sure. I'll kind of give some examples on what questions I ask clients, and they definitely can be twofold, for clients to ask virtual assistants as well. But one of the big ones that I always make sure to ask, if it's not asked already, is how do you like to communicate?
Mm.
So, for myself, communication is a huge thing for myself when I'm running my business. People might classify me as an over communicator, but I always like to make sure that my clients are in the loop. They are getting exactly what they're paying for, and everything is open and honest. So I always make sure that I'm asking, what is your communication style like? Are you somebody who is strictly just to email only? That's really how I just want to talk to you. Or are you the type where, hey, I'm going to shoot you a text at 9 o'clock at night? Those are big things when bringing on a virtual assistant, because depending on the individual, they might want more communication than just an email during a day, or they might want some form of messaging app like Slack or Voxer
Mm-hmm.
to be able to communicate with their clients. So for myself, I any client that I bring on is almost like family for me. So I am usually that individual that says, "Hey, I know you've got a busy day. I'm shooting $5 for Starbucks today." That those
Mm.
people are their family to me. And there's other virtual assistants that strictly just want to run their business and that's it. So that's a huge one. But also, let's see here. Some of the other questions that I try to ask. Let's see here. I just hit a blank.
It's okay.
You're
Uh,
good.
Can I
Um,
ask you a question real quick? That's
yeah,
coming in for me. Yeah, I was curious about boundaries. So if you know how to communicate about boundaries, do you have any thoughts about that in terms of, you know, when you want boundaries to be set or not around the communication?
definitely. So for myself in my personal business, any communication that I have with my clients, I do use a third-party messaging app because that is a boundary for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Any business stuff comes through that messaging app, while like my texting or calling or anything, that's usually reserved for my family, friends, anything that's personally related to me. So that's a boundary for myself, but I always communicate the time frames that I'm working as well.
Good.
So for myself, I do work a lot of evenings and a lot of weekends. So anytime I'm onboarding a client, that is clearly outlined and saying, these are the times that I'm working. You're welcome to shoot me an email or shoot me a message on Slack, but just understand that I might not get to it right away, or that it might not be responded to immediately, but I will get to it within these time frames.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that, even in coaching, we form partnerships with people. That's what coaching is forming a partnership. And so there's these aspects of a partnership that need to be discussed, and boundaries and communication styles and all of these things are part of that. And so I can imagine it's the same when partnering up with a virtual assistant. It's really, I'm seeing the importance of communicating yourself as much as you can to someone else to see if it's a good match, so that you guys can work together in the best way possible. So this has been really, really helpful for us. So what's the legacy you intend to leave through the work that you're doing into the world?
One of the things that I always intend to leave is, even if I hate to leave clients, but there comes a time where sometimes where my work here is done.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I like to leave people with personally is I like being able to show people how they can organize and how they can manage their time. um, Being able to teach those tips and tricks on how to do things like that is so foundational, not only in their business, but as well as their personal lives as well. So that's a huge thing. I want people to be able to say, I feel comfortable and I feel like I know what I'm doing now. That's a huge thing for myself in my business personally.
That's fantastic. I can see how just teaching those foundational life skills really can have a further impact on that person's life and the people around them. So that's a really fantastic legacy to be leaving through your work. And let me check in with you around how people can contact you.
Sure. So people can contact me either through email. So that's just my first and last name, Tiffany, Tiffany, Niemann, Niemann .va@gmail.com. Or I'm always open to either a call or a text at 605-651-2379. And then I think in the show notes, you should have a link for booking a discovery call with me as well.
Wonderful. Yes, I will put all of this information in the show notes so that people can access you and contact you via discovery call. And is there anything else that you feel is important to share before we come to completion?
Sure. I think something that's so vital to share is there's so many different types of virtual assistants out there. So today, we gave you just kind of a brief overview as what a general virtual assistant can do, but I think it's also important to realize that there are social media managers out there, and there are Pinterest managers out there if that's some way that you want to market your business, podcast managers. A lot of those types of individuals probably started out as a general VA themselves. So there's different types of assistance out there. It just really depends on what you need and what your business needs as well.
Really great info. I'm so glad that we connected and that you said yes to coming on the podcast, because these are questions I had when I was early in my business. And the only way I ever got these questions was by asking other coaches that I knew. And so I'm so happy that I got to ask you these important questions and receive your answers. And now other people have that information so that they can make the best decisions possible for them and their business. So thank you so much for being here.
Of course, I had a blast. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. If there's only one thing that you take away from today's episode, I hope that you have had some of your burning questions answered around hiring a virtual assistant. I hope you will check out the show notes and contact Tiffany if you are looking for a virtual assistant. And I want to thank you again for listening, for taking the time to be here. And always remember that Holistic Coach legacy is truly a path, not a destination. Many blessings to you. Thank you.